So same thing as I said the last, all pretty much since 2020. Make sure you take care of yourself. Just let me know if you're not feeling well. Like Callie did, she's emailed me, let me know she's not feeling good, can't make it. I told her I'm recording this, so that way she can catch up and see. I know it's a pretty dry YouTube watch, but it's not for the entertainment value. So I'm really excited about some workshops that we're not going to dive into today, and I'd really like to have more people here too when we do that, because it's hands-on, and I want people to ask questions in real time. I want you guys to help with it, because setting up an interview, I do them by myself. Man, it's really nice when you can like have someone sit and be reference and moving lights around, adjust things, and it's nice when you have at least two people. Also for just trading ideas, like I don't know if I really like that or not. So kicking into our first week of this, we're going to move into concepts, ideas. I know I've talked with Adam, I know where he's kind of leading, and I know I've talked with a couple of you a little bit here and there, and it's okay if you're still kind of tossing multiple ideas around, and it's really okay if you're not sure, because what I want to do is help you land into an idea, giving you the weekend to really start thinking about how you want to put that particular idea to production, because as we saw last week, as we saw on Tuesday, that we have a lot of different ways to go about this process. It's not very cookie cutter. Now, doesn't mean that one documentary couldn't be produced almost exactly like this one, be totally different subject matters falling in whatever that mode is from the 6 that we discussed, not counting our our mockumentary concept. And then looking at Leone's, it kind of fell in multiple areas, and I think that's perfectly fine. So hopefully these modes don't make you feel like you have to pigeonhole yourself into one, but more I'm hoping it kind of inspires your direction, where you want to go. So depending on kind of how, I'm going to ask you guys, we're going to go around, it'll take just a minute, kind of get an idea where you're at, and then from there I'll kind of decide if there's like a good video. I want to show you the different masterclass options that we'll watch throughout and that I'll suggest throughout, because it's just such a great resource. God, I wish I'd have killed to have had this back when I was in the learning process like that. Not to say that I don't literally pick up new things every week from some of these things. But let's talk about, Adam, do you mind to start with you and talk about one of your concepts? You had a couple. You had 3 that I think you originally kind of talked to me about. And what I want to do is it's even the idea you didn't decide to go with, I want to discuss that briefly because that might make you think, oh, I could try something like that because of this, or maybe this is a thing I didn't consider. Everything from locations to access to time, all that. So yeah, you had an idea of a couple of immigration stories.
Last year or so, we had a guy descend on our house. Turned out came from like the same village in China that my wife's daughter lives at now or something, and we got a call and said he's at the border, in Arizona, and they got a plane ticket for Wichita. And so he descended upon us, and he stayed with us about a week, and I said, well, why not document your journey? Because he flew from China to Thailand to Czechoslovakia to Colombia, and then he walked with hundreds of others from Colombia up through Central America, eventually landing in, crossing the wide open border in Arizona. And he was just an impossible interview. He wouldn't talk into the microphone. I'd prepare all these things translated into Mandarin, and then he would just give one-word answers. And it was,
I'm glad you mentioned that too.
Squeezing water from a rock from him. And then I did more interviewing where I translated what he said into English, so eventually I could make it into a project. But he just irritates me so much that I don't want to do it. And then there's my wife, where, for that documentary list or the movie list I put out down at the very bottom where it says One Child Nation, that's her story. You know, she wanted another kid, so she did what she had to get that, and the village government people came in and basically put her in a hospital and forcibly sterilized her and took that baby aborted. And so one of the reasons she came to America many years after, but, you know, so I thought it would be interesting. But logistically, it's difficult. You want me to talk the third one now?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I have some thoughts on why you are leaning towards the third one too, but go ahead. And so this is your third concept. So the first two are immigration type stories, different purposes, both originating in China, ending here, but yeah, go right through. And this is one you're probably gonna do, right? Your third one?
This third one seems a little bit more interesting creatively. It's playing off of that video, the last one I turned in with the music, and then making the documentary about, you know, interviewing Aaron and his part in this as if he was a real private eye trying to find this guy, but using footage off of YouTube about the spa murders that happened a few years ago or a couple of years ago, whenever it was, in Atlanta, where the guy walked from spa to spa to spa and just gunned down these Chinese women, and over in Albuquerque, a couple of different isolated events, and then with the one that the guy attacked my wife. So it's a serious, it's not mock, but it's...
That was kind of our conversation yesterday, is what is it? Leone's was debatable, you know, and kind of fit in a couple of maybe a subgenre or, you know, a hybrid. And his, I think, because reenactments are one thing, you're kind of utilizing a fictionalized character as Aaron playing a detective, but kind of setting up the story. So it's not really a mockumentary because you're trying to use real facts and you're trying to tell from. It's really, I think it's really interesting. It's been fun to try and categorize it as you put it together, because you're hitting different spots. I think it falls mostly in expository, but in more of like Aaron is being portrayed as the detective, not a reenactment, right? Like you're kind of fictionalized the truth, but you're going for a true life story.
Yeah, it's like a lot of movies, you know, where you have historical fiction.
Based on
It's absolute fact that Battleship Island happened, but of course nobody knows all of the conversations that happened between the Japanese and the Koreans and how it happened, but no one disputes that.
You don't have the actual detective, so you're creating it.
Yeah. Aaron is a fictional person that helped me find Dayton as the, you know, so I will explore why I did what I did, you know, and vigilante justice, and apply it like there was a lot of different things that happened across the country, and then it finally landed home.
Yeah.
So I took and went that direction. And I'm going to interview Joey as a clinical psychologist, because that's what he is, and he'll...
He's actually got a psychology degree. Have you seen a Cruel and Stupid Gesture on Netflix about the guy who started National Lampoon's magazine? They play it as like a factual thing, like he's the real person, but then in real life he died at like 30. And so I being as naive as I was when I started the movie, I thought he was telling his own story, because he comes on and just talks, like he interrupts, breaks that fourth wall and just starts talking about what's happening in this particular time when he was at Harvard and stuff. But it really, but it's all, you know, fake, and the guy playing him is not even close to the same age, and it's really funny, and they have a lot of, it's a totally unique approach to the script writing narrative process. And I think this has, without the humor, it's still documenting stuff, but you're telling real accounts, you just don't have the real people. So I think it still has quite of a heavy fall in and the expository approach, because it's still got that godlike voice, and you're using archival footage that you can acquire. So there's a lot. It's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be a great project. It's going to be a lot of work. The documentary project is the most time-consuming. So I like where you're headed with, and I think it's an important story. And documentaries should hopefully help society become more educated and empathetic to stories, and invoke feeling and emotion. And I believe that I think all three of your concepts are full of emotion and full of just the first one being traveling up through South America, coming to America from the same village as your wife's daughter, right? Is that? And so you actually have sat with him and tried to.
Oh yeah, I've got it all interviewed, shot.
So you've actually already started that process because you knew the story was fascinating before you ever had this project. But you said he kept giving one-word answers. That is not a good thing to have on the. You don't want to say, "How old are you?" and they say, "I'm 18," or say 18. You want them to say, "I am 18 years old." So you have to kind of coach them, direct them into how they respond back, so that you can develop that narrative in post. And we're going to go way more into this when we do the interview workshop, and then we'll follow up the interview workshop with. For the production side, and then we'll follow up with the post-production side and how I set up my interviews in post. Because you can do it your own way, but I'm going to show you how I do it and what's been effective for us on our documentaries. But if you have someone who's just difficult because maybe they're not as interested, maybe they're nervous, there's a lot of reasons why they can be difficult. That may not be the story you want to focus on right now. Now, can you break through that mold? A good friend of mine, Patrick Clement, has been working on a documentary for years about an artist from Western Kansas who's very controversial, very closed off, incredibly closed off. And I came in the project at the end after he died, and we did it as a field producer to record the funeral, because that was controversial. He would make a lot of political art. If he didn't like someone in town, he would do a piece on them and then hang it on his fence. And his whole fence was lined with these very offensive, very funny art pieces. And maybe I can get a hold of Pat. I have some of the footage, but I need permission from him to show some of it. And he was even on the History Channel for American Pickers or something stopped by his house. The guy was a character, but man, if you came in with a camera and a big smile on your face, he's just as likely to shine a blowtorch in your face. Like, he actually did that to a lady. He had, ran her off with a blowtorch that he was using for welding. Guy was crazy, but just fascinating. And it took Patrick a really long time, a lot of sit-downs over coffee before he ever let him bring a camera in. We're talking years of a relationship that he had to develop to get through that mold, but he wanted that story really bad. And if you ever have the pleasure of working with Patrick, he's very stubborn and it takes a lot of time. This won't work for this project because you have a deadline that's not going to accommodate that for this. So that's why his first one just doesn't really work. Doesn't mean he can't break through that fascinating story eventually, but currently, by the end of the month, that would be pretty much impossible. Now, your second one is another story that I think just takes more time to tell, because it's not a new concept of the one-child family approach in China. That's been going on for a while, but I think there's a lot to unpack there that could really take a long time too. But that story is also really fascinating. You have it right there in your home, and I think people really need to know that those are the kind of things that take place. And abortion being such a huge concept in America right now, even this week, people would watch that. That would get into festivals. People want to know they want to hear that story. So is it one that should be done and could be done? Absolutely. But I really like the one that you're hitting on as well. There's archival footage out there. News coverage has taken place. Again, this one also hit right at home. You're very passionate about it. So the first thing when Adam and I talked about his projects initially, my first thought, or my first statement is basically, what are you the most passionate about? Because documentaries are time consuming. So I've been kind of I wouldn't say bullied by any means, but I've been convinced to do documentaries by people who are very passionate in their own right, but didn't know how to approach it, and talked me into it, let's say that. And if there's not a budget pushing that, and you're just doing it because you think you're gonna do someone a favor, doing a documentary for someone is not a logical favor. We're talking hundreds of hours of your time potentially, and if you're not passionate about that story, then it's gonna be quite a grueling process. You'll enjoy it a lot more if you find what you're passionate about. If football is what you're passionate about, let's start there. If you're not passionate about abortion, but you know someone wants to watch it, and maybe it's a budget, and then you want to tell that story, that's great. There's reasons you can work on stuff that maybe you don't have as much of an opinion on, but if you're going to do it, for instance, for me, for class, for points, and for a learning curve, pick something you're very, very passionate about. So that will definitely make it more enjoyable, and it'll come through your projects too. So, so you have 3 ideas, leaning towards year 1. By Tuesday, I would like for you guys to fully be ready for production, knowing how you're going to go approach this stuff. So the weekend, and hopefully throughout today, you can kind of narrow in towards a direction. So let's stay with the back, because I think you guys might be working together, right? Is that possible? No, you and Andrew. Are you talking?
I don't think.
Oh, okay, we'll come back around,
No, I
okay.
don't think
So, yeah, we'll come back. So what's your ideas that you might be leaning towards, do you think?
Doing like an interview with my grandpa. I
Okay.
think he was like a nurse in one of the wars.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I was gonna like talk about like what it was like and have him.
What war would have been Vietnam?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. Yeah.
And if he's, depending on his age, maybe Korea and Vietnam, there is some, but I'm not sure. Yeah, and maybe that's what some of the stuff you want to find out.
Yeah.
I see a lot of grandparents for this assignment because oftentimes as you're growing up, you catch snippets of stories, maybe your parents mention something, you see stuff like on the walls and the decor, it kind of strikes it. And I noticed that this one that we had a few years ago, it was longer than the required time, and I've mentioned this before. I let him go longer because his grandma had been paralyzed when she got shot in '91, and she talked about this, and it was very much like a gift to his family to get her story, and it was really great. It was really heartwarming and very inspiring, and so he went longer than I wanted, but there's always an exception to the rule, and I think those family stories, they're really important. And I think they make you a lot closer too.
Yeah.
You will, absolutely, yeah. You're definitely gonna learn some stuff. And if he's willing to tell those stories, sometimes war is very difficult to talk about.
Yeah.
My grandfather would not talk with my father in person about it, but he would let him write up questions, and then he would answer the question. He would write down his answers and give it to my dad. So what do we have there? Not a film, unless we go some sort of reenact, kind of what even Adam's talking about, but Dad's wanting to put it into like a book. So there's other ways to document history. And in that particular case, maybe it works better as a fictional narrative that's based on true accounts or something. But yeah, if they're willing to sit down and talk to you about it, definitely, your family's gonna appreciate it too. And we've done a lot of that kind of stuff too. I think that's awesome. Have you talked with him much on the subject before?
No, I did ask if he was alive during it, and he was like, yeah, I was a nurse. I don't know, I'm not sure which war it was. And he's like 78, so
Okay.
I don't even know, but I know he's willing to talk about it. I also might talk about something else that's impacted his life, like super traumatic, or
Yeah.
like that the world knows about.
So that's,
Something.
so if it becomes finding your direction, okay, so I'm glad you mentioned that, that's wonderful, because you might go in aiming for this war story and leave with this whole other component to his life that turns it into not about this war, but about this person, or, so what I'm saying is you go in and you gather what you can, and we'll talk about, interview questions and stuff next week. but you don't really know, you can't really force a story. You can nudge it and you can try to get it in a direction, but you're gonna need to gather as whatever you can, because documentaries are written backwards, so you're gonna actually be in post-production going, oh, this is what's flowing and this is what works. I mean, aside from handing them a script and telling them what to say, you don't always know what you're gonna get. You can prompt it, and you can nudge it, but I've interviewed someone before, and they told me this whole story about a medical procedure that they had gone through. And then we sat down again, because I interviewed him many times. And the next time I interviewed him, I wanted to bring that up because I slept on it, and I came up with some more questions about it. And one of his family members was present, one of his kids at the next one. And she'd kind of nursed him back to health through that. And he was a closed book. He would not discuss that in front of them. And I didn't understand that about that relationship until I got into it. And it really flustered me as the interviewer. I'm going, this was like questions 1 through 6. Like, why are we even sitting here then if you're not going to talk about what we just talked about a month ago? So you're going to run into some of that stuff. And I would still take that over most actors pretty much any day. But it can be very frustrating, and only experience and time will help you get more comfortable with that. And I've interviewed my grandfather as well. And his story to him isn't fascinating. His story to him is boring. And so to get him excited about his own story was a unique challenge.
Yeah.
But being family, that was a little easier than, and his wife is adorable, and so she was so happy to like tell us all about, the Great Depression. So then I just had 90% of that 2-hour sit down, way longer than you will want to do, was her telling the story, even just kind of narrating it for him to fill in the gaps that he wouldn't mention. So I love it. That's a great concept. Did you have another one that you were leaning towards? Nope. Okay, good. Then I don't want to encourage you. But when I know you're on like the track team and things like that, there's many stories when you start meeting friends and teammates and stuff from all over. But
Yeah, I don't care about that.
yeah, they can tell their own story.
Yeah.
They got social media, right?
Yeah.
Aaron, any thoughts, any concepts that you're on yet, or are you a blank slate? What's your scenario?
I have a few. I'm trying to figure out. I don't know if I'm going to be able to actually do them just because like
Logistics.
logistics of.
Sure.
But
So consider, like the ones I showed of mine, both of those are snippets of what I want to be a way bigger story someday. So if you're going, okay, I don't think I can get all of it. I can't get the whole 1986 basketball team together. But can you narrow it down into a chapter and focus on it? Because you don't have to do 10 whole minutes. If you do a 3 to 4 minute documentary for me for this assignment, there will be a great learning curve there, and you're going to take a lot from that. For when you do end up doing a 30-minute one that might be longer, not as accessible or whatever. So, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
But I was thinking about possibly talking to my cousin or my brother. They both have experience. My cousin is a Border Patrol officer.
Oh, fascinating.
Yeah.
Which we need to get your second story and his story together. That'd be interesting. Sorry, go ahead.
So just hearing some of his stories and his experiences. He's been a Border Patrol officer 5 years now.
So is your concern that it's not local and things
Yeah.
like that, that part of
And
logistics?
then my brother, he lives in Olathe, and he is a police officer, a sheriff's deputy, and he's been in he's just had a pretty incredible life. He's been firefighter, correctional officer, Marine.
So he's done
officer, so
a
he's
few
done
different
everything.
And any of those stories, because I've interviewed, prison officers, police officers, all firefighters. We've there's so much there. A lot they can't tell you, but there's still a lot that you can gain from that. And yeah, I think that's a great concept. And that's a lot closer, more accessible, but still 3 hours or so. So you still, and making a 6-hour round trip, if you put that into a day, that's a full day. So something to consider is, having good questions ready, make sure you have everything you need, because you're not going to be a block away from the studio kind of scenario. But very doable, driving 3 hours. Yeah, I've done that plenty of times. we've done at least 5 or 6 4 a.m. calls since I've been here, just to look. Yeah, 4 a.m. calls to get to usually Kansas City and back, not wanting to stay the night if we can avoid it kind of scenario. What? You've never been up at 4 a.m.? Yeah. I think it's a lot of fun, so we don't do it every week. It's usually because we're really excited about it. We did a 4 a.m. call for the national championship game in Little Rock, Arkansas, because we had an 8-hour drive. But we were so pumped to go. You know, it was the championship game, and it was fun. So most of the time, we don't do a 4 a.m. call unless it's like, you know, we got to drive all the way to 4 hours out to western Kansas, and we just do not want to. They don't have a hotel room in that town, and we're coming home no matter what. So it's very doable. I think that's very doable. Does he ever come back here?
Yeah, and
So there's.
they come back here. His wife is actually also a police officer.
Oh,
She
okay.
she comes down here sometimes to the police station and teaches Spanish.
That's another married couple, both law enforcement. That's an interesting story there too. Even if you just think about their crazy schedules that they have, you know, overnights, holidays, weekends, all those kinds of things. Just knowing how they would balance that in their relationship would be an interesting story that I think would be captivating. And something, so I want to mention this because you said sometimes they come down here. You're more than welcome to use the studio for the interview space. Now, I say that because you are, and you don't always have access to a good location. And we have, you know, all the cords and batteries and everything you need. I discourage it in the fact that if you can get to that story, and that story's in, we did a whole series called Artists in Their Space. We interviewed 20-some people. We didn't do one of them here. We wanted to go to their studio. The studio was one of the characters, or wherever they worked. So if you're able to get into a police station interview, which like our last interview, I did 3 or 4 at the police station a year or so ago. We did them there. When we interviewed board members for the Fox Theater, we did it in the theater. And it was still close enough that when we had the wrong SD cards, we were just able to run back to the studio real fast. That would have been a mess if I'd been in Kansas City. We'd have been running to Best Buy or something. So you're welcome to use the studio, but if you can get in that environment, if you can get into that woodworker shop, that's more interesting, I think. But it's one of those options. Unless you wanted to go to Olathe because something about their house or location where they work at, I don't know. There's a lot to decide, and there's so many ways to go about it that, you know, if you just can find that story. But yeah, if you're more than welcome to absolutely shoot here. If it makes sense, you have plenty of space to set up. So I think that's great. Have you discussed it with them in any detail yet to see if they're okay with it?
No. I mean, I know they're happy with me filming them because they're actually my 3rd project. They're my actors.
Oh, okay.
So,
Gotcha. So they don't mind being on camera, that's good. If they're willing to act, then, yeah, telling your own story, you would assume would be easier, right? For some people, it's easier to put on a persona. Yeah, I'd say, and that goes back to what you gotta figure out over this weekend. What permission access do you have? You know, not just, do I wanna do this old coach, but is that old coach available? Is he even in town that weekend for me to, yeah. So, yeah, that would be what your assignment is. I think you should dive into that direction. And then as you get closer to interviewing, think more about, okay, am I going to interview both of them, talking about their work, or am I going to focus on one? And that kind of gets into how many interviews should you do. One can be sufficient for a short film. All of our Artists in Their Space series, I should show you guys one at some point. And we would like to kick it back up a little bit, but it's been a while since we produced one. We're all just the artists. We didn't interview a single other person, no, not a client, not a spouse, not anything like that, because we were trying to centralize the focus on, they do their interview, they do a demo, and we'd get in and out, and hopefully not eat up too much of their time. We have a lot of busy people that were doing us favors to let us tell their story. So yeah, all those kinds of things consider. 2 is great when you can have that conversational feel. And I don't like interviewing them together unless they're going to work off one another. But again, we'll get into that more when we get to the interview process. But I think it's a great concept. Andrew, what you had a mockumentary idea?
Yeah, so here's the deal. Anyway,
The
so.
glasses sold it there for me. Yeah.
Okay, here's the deal.
If you want sunglasses in the
So-
studio, you got something to say.
My mockumentary idea is gonna be centralized on a guy doing this mundane job for some facility that he's never been in. So it's like
So he's very
basically,
naive, or
what?
like he's very naive to the process? He's doing a mundane job for.
So he's doing a mundane job for like 5 years for this facility that he's never been inside of. So, okay, for reference, this facility's underground.
Oh, okay.
So
That
he's,
helps a
so
little
he has, and he's doing this job of making sure like he cleans these filters above the ground. Like, so that they can breathe down there, obviously.
But he doesn't know, like.
But he's never been in that facility before.
Okay,
Like, he knows it exists, but he's never been in it before, and he's been doing this for 5 years.
interesting.
And so this guy's driving around, and like the camera crew is following him. Like the camera crew's obviously there. Like he's talking back and forth with them during this entire like.
Are they, so one question would be, and this is more stuff we're gonna hash out over after the weekend, but are the camera crew kind of one of the characters? Kind of like what we do in
Yeah.
Shadow, where like that sound guy gets killed at one point and then the audio's real bad for a while?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of what,
Great
like,
documentary.
yeah, so it's like the camera guy's like in the background, and he's like, so wait, have you ever been in this facility? No. So it's like,
Okay, yeah. So one question, do you have your character? Do you know who that is?
it's gonna be me.
Okay.
I'm
I wondered if
I'm
it's-
just gonna star as the guy though.
All right. Yeah,
And so.
that'll be easy for directing in some ways.
Yeah, so I will be the, I may just do the whole thing, I'm kidding, but, like, I may,
Well, that was one of the reasons I asked, is one of your characters, the advanced class, they did one where they did a documentary crew out in nature, it was supposed to be a horror film, and the cam op is running camera, but he's also a character. So the character was like gathering footage for the story, but at some point, like, you know, camera gets knocked over because he gets killed. So you're kind of bringing that crew, you know, what was that, Strange Wilderness, where they're nature crew, and they just completely incompetent. I think it's great. Who do you have that can help you as far as crew wise?
I don't have anyone else at the moment, which is my one concern at this project. Who else do
I think it'll be easier for you to find someone to hold a boom pole and someone to hold a camera and play those roles than probably like, you know, Aaron's got to get someone connected from 3 hours away, even if they're super excited about something. So I think you'll be able to find someone to fill in that. That shouldn't be too bad.
Yeah.
One of those things.
But-
Yeah,
alright.
you got one.
I can do both at the same time.
You could
Fine,
hold a boom pole.
Nah, it's fine, I mean, I'm probably gonna have like a lava mic on or something.
I've been training shoulders recently, so I might be able to do it.
But my other concern for this too is making a prop for events, because it's just only one time I'm not gonna show something.
I would
so.
do it out of cardboard and paint it. Cardboards, and I mean, I could literally hand you enough cardboard now. One of my best friends,
That's good.
Patrick Cavillo is in Atlanta now, but he would make any prop that we ever needed for anything, he could make it out of cardboard, just cut up, and I think it'd be doable and
Yeah,
convincing.
it's so like the vent, like I have an idea for, it's just like this kind of box square, like with some sort of a fan device inside, and so it's like.
Yeah. I can
It just
see it.
literally sits outside, like on the side of the road, like in
And
the
you
field.
got plenty of open fields to like just add to this weird, like,
Exactly,
just desolate.
yeah, and like.
I got a vision for your story, it's great.
Like, yeah, and like how it's gonna start is just like, he's gonna receive like an automated voice message on his phone, it's like, that's a call. And then you're just gonna see a car just driving by or something like that, it's just him inside of it, and it's like the camera crew gets out and follows him out, and it's like, is this it? It's just this small thing, yep.
It's our whole story. I like it.
Yep,
And if you could have some like crazy, you know, disastrous twist that takes them on a different adventure, you know, there's a lot you can pack onto
it's
that.
sort of gonna be a little bit of comedy, because then at the end of this thing, it's gonna be like, do you wanna try and get into the facility? Sure, why not? And he just gets turned around and rejected, so it's just, like,
Awesome.
it had this build up, and then it just dies.
That's
Like-
interesting. Yeah, no, I think it's great. I wanted to show you guys some documentaries. I realized I didn't have any queued up on Tuesday, but I did want you to consider. And the reason being, when we first started doing this assignment, we didn't do mockumentaries. We did one of those, like, you know, mostly expository. because I didn't really even nudge towards the poetic, because really the thing was I wanted you to hold an interview. But then when I became a big fan of What We Do in the Shadows. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It's now a show on FX, but the original documentary, what really drew me into altering this for our project was because the original What We Do in the Shadows, the feature mockumentary, was funded by the government of New Zealand, by their documentary grant fund. A documentary grant funded a mockumentary that turned into a hit FX show and has been creating a ton of jobs. It's built a huge audience. It's its own brand now. And that started as a mockumentary funded by a documentary grant. So when I realized all of that in my research, just being a fan of the show and looking it up, I thought there's no reason that you guys shouldn't be allowed to do documentaries too, as long as you're still doing those same core concepts of following someone through their story, whether you're staging it or not. Is really irrelevant to me. I want to see you going through that process and thinking through those things that a documentary incorporates. So I love the concept, and I'm happy to see a mockumentary included. I really love the realism of documentaries and what it does for humanity, but it's also wonderful to like sit back and chuckle and laugh at something really goofy. And I've done a couple, and it didn't feel like work to me. You're usually working with someone you want to if you're going to do something silly like that, and we just end up laughing the whole way through, even though it's still a ton of work. So yeah, hopefully you have that similar experience. Awesome. Owen, what are you thinking?
Well, the original plan was to do a documentary on the national championship game, but that would fall past the due date, so.
In December? Yeah, because the game's like December 7th or 8th or something.
So I think me and Judah are gonna team up for this one and do a little documentary about the playoff game.
I was gonna say, you could easily hit something leading up to it, yeah. Yeah, that's why I gotta cut you guys a little short today, because I gotta be at Gallons at 11 for pre-production. And that is just building up, like, you got practices, you got team meetings, you could interview some players and coaches. You could easily bite off more than what you'd be able to get done by the end of November. But that's where I encourage you to narrow it down. Can you get just the quarterback or just this like coach, and focus it in on, are you just gonna talk to the cornerback and the cornerback coaches? And so, you have so much story when you have 11 players on the field, endless amount of coaches in the sideline. Fans, we tried to do, so at KU, big basketball school, we're really obsessed with the process. As students, we would go and camp out, So we did a documentary hoping KU would do really, really well from the fan perspective. And we had kids camping out in tents and out in Fieldhouse. We had 4 bars lined up, all with location releases going to let us film the fans watching the games for March Madness. And then they go and lose out in like the first round. So the whole thing was a wash. My friend that was directing it graduated. He was a year older than me. The project is, sometimes documentaries fall apart. But what I would encourage you to do, because you don't know what the outcome will be of the game, which is kind of the exciting part, but also the stressful part, is try not to bite off too much. Narrow it into a particular couple of players or a coach or something, maybe a coach and a player relationship. Because you could easily go, hey, I'm setting up the camera. If you want to come do a 5-minute interview, talk about your experience, you might have 30 people lined up, and then too much. But yeah, you guys have access to practices, you have access to facilities, you have access to players and coaches. That's checking a lot of the most important boxes. Before I even get into it, you're both working for the football team, so you must be passionate about it, right? So yeah, I think you have a lot of boxes checked there. You're both in the same role. You have access to the cameras that the football team uses. I like it, yeah. I think it's a good approach for you. Any concerns or any thoughts? Where are you and Judah at this point?
Well,
Where is Judah at this point? Different. I need to get it.
I don't know where he's at specifically.
I know.
It's like, obviously he's not here, but.
You can talk in
Well,
like
I think we're just like brainstorming right at the moment, like, because this is a very, very big week for the
like the production teams are stressed, IT and athletics and everybody's a little
The
stressed.
number one team versus the number two team,
Yeah,
so it's
and
a,
we're hosting, so we got a lot of pressure just to make sure it goes off well.
so I think we just wanna get through this week, just, get the,
You gotta survive this week. I mean, literally, the athletics department told ESPN they couldn't come so that we would run the production. So talk about pressure. If I'm going, then there's pressure, because usually I leave it to the team.
Sometimes you wish like the professionals actually come.
Well, yeah, there's various reasons. It's a pro and con list. It's not like ESPN coming's a bad thing. We've let them come before, Fox Sports as well. Netflix wanted to do a series on the team, and they told them no. And quite frankly, it's because it was Last Chance U. But yeah, well, we don't consider ourselves the last option for these students. And Last Chance U had a very approach of, oh, I was going to prison and oh, I couldn't pass grades. And so there's a very big narrative around that is like, I had to come to this school and now I'm here. And that's why they said no for that particular reason. Yeah, I had the exact same reaction when I found out. I was like, you just told Netflix to not come? Like, that's a lot of publicity. But then when they were like, yeah, but we don't want to consider ourselves the last resort, we're the number one team in the country. So I appreciated why, but it took me, I had the exact same response when they said it. I was like, really? But them telling ESPN not to come this weekend was a bit more of a surprise in some ways too, because just one of their lenses is more than our entire package. Like, they literally have way better equipment. Not that we can't perform well with what we have, but we certainly don't have what a company owned by Disney and ABC has. So,
wait, so what about the playoff game? What if they wanna come to that one?
I think they have more, that gets into some of the complicated, where's it located at, who's running, is the NJCAA making that call, or is that HCC making that call? So I'm not certain.
Because they were at the playoff game last year.
And yeah, they do. When I did the championship game in 2020, we were right next to, I think, Fox Sports. So we had to work around them. They were great. They were really wonderful. No, CBS Sports. I think that was CBS Sports. The guys were awesome. They were joking around and friendly, even helpful, because we were lined up next to them. But they got a $100,000 lens, and we don't even have $100,000 in the press box. And so, but we had a different role there. We weren't live streaming, we were doing a documentary. And so we had a different approach to the championship game in 2020. CBS Sports handled the stream, and we archived about 3 to 4 terabytes of media, from the radio to drones to aerial, or to the press box, all the way down to cameras on the ground and a time lapse, and practices beforehand, and then afterwards celebrations. We fortunately won, and we were doing a bias story because we were all from HCC. So it was a different approach. I could literally do a whole week just on that one project, because it was a lot of logistics, and a lot of fun too. But yeah, I think you and Judah have a good direction you're headed. Interested to hear more about it next week and kind of where you end up. And I get you guys are definitely pretty busy, so. But you also have the luxury of, we've been filming football all season, so if you need highlights and stuff like that, then you ask somebody that is affiliated with that. So you kind of have an inside information there to help you out. It's cool. Were you thinking mockumentary too, or were you just kind of throwing it?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably mockumentary.
Yeah, you're pretty sarcastic. I think that'd be great. It would be good for you.
Really?
Nah. You have a good sense of humor. Put it that way. I think you'd have fun with the mockumentary. What's one of your concepts you're thinking about?
I'm keeping it real. I have no idea.
So,
When the good idea comes, it will come.
I know exactly what you mean by that. You're not just passing that off.
Like all my projects I've had so far have been like spontaneous and just remember that one project I did where my buddy Gabe was eating that other dude?
Oh, yes, I remember.
Yeah,
Remember
yeah.
your bath salts character or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was an entirely different thing before that, but I hated it, and we just completely came up with a new idea and we shot it within 2 hours.
Yeah, so, not trying to get into that, but there's something about that creative process where if it's forced, it doesn't necessarily just pop out. I don't know if I have my goofy book over here, random ideas. It's all a narrative idea or fictional ideas, but sometimes it's when you get kind of nudged up to a deadline, you make more creative choices, more definitive choices too. But one thing I would, because I thought you and Andrew were working together, if you guys are already helping each other, then you guys could partner up and help each other with that process. Nothing wrong with that. Because these documentaries are definitely, it's good to have someone that kind of like runs the team, but man, I like the Nationals doc that I showed you, we co-directed, co-produced. 3 of us were in the editing room at different times. So there's nothing wrong with partnering up too if you don't have like something that just really pops out. Because my hope is that if you and Andrew partner on your mockumentary, it's that much stronger. Because you can help and you can have more insights. Yeah, no, go ahead.
I make a documentary about my family Thanksgiving.
Is there, well, tell me why, I guess. I mean, what's your thought? What's the nudge? Because you absolutely can make one on anything you want, but my question is, what's the story there?
My parents,
It's,
my family eating Thanksgiving food. And
are
my
they
dog-
are
and my
they
dog's
fun?
born.
Is it going to be like an Eddie Murphy film or something?
No, it's just my family eating Thanksgiving, and then like one of them kind of starting to get into politics, and then they are also yelling
Okay, so
at
that's
each
what I was
other.
kind of, there's something there. Well, so technically, you could easily have an observational category. A style of documentary embraced by Simon Verte will often has to be unobtrusive as possible in order to capture their subjects in a raw, unguarded state, right? So when you say that, that makes me think of number 4, because you could easily set up a couple of cameras, just let them roll, and just wait for it to happen. And then chop out the really mundane dry parts and speed it up, you know.
Yeah.
But it's not, I mean, there's a lot of, and I had it on last night while I was doing something on my tablet, on TV, I just had Arctic shots just playing through. It's just observational. It wasn't a nature documentary. It was literally just cinematography from the Arctic, just playing on YouTube for 4 hours. And it was ambient sound, no music. I know it sounds dry as hell, but I just needed something calming and therapeutic and not distracting because I was trying to focus on other stuff. So that would be an observational type documentary. And there is a platform for that thing. It had like 5 million views. So people were watching it. It just popped into my feed because it was on autoplay, and I just ended up leaving it on. And after about 90 minutes, I was like, oh man, it's still on. But it was kind of like people just white noise, I guess, if anything. But I think that's a pretty interesting concept. Is it a big family, I guess I should ask? Just, is there a lot of characters at play?
Oh, yeah, there's probably at least, if we're doing the fire department Thanksgiving last week, there's gonna be upwards of like 30, 35 people.
Yeah, I don't know, why not? What was your first idea? Tell me about your first idea for the group, about the Old Lady Club.
Oh, okay. So basically, back in Salina, there's this like very like conservative group of old women called the Granny Brigade.
The Granny Brigade, okay.
And they basically protest against anything that's like Democrat or left wing at
Just
all.
anything.
Yeah, they're very pro Donald Trump. And
They're probably not quite as, what's the family in Topeka that's,
the Westboro Baptist. Church.
yeah, that they're really, really controversial.
Yeah, they're just straight up hateful people.
Yeah, they're not quite that extreme, I'm guessing, but still, I mean,
they're still pretty hateful.
they're pretty
My
good.
grandma don't
Man.
like them hateful,
that
unfortunately.
story has to be told. I want to see that. I want to go hang out with these women and have them complain to the camera for me. We may just have to do, well, what was the reason?
We actually, okay, so here's the thing, a lot of them
I
are
want to see that
are
sort of
pretty close, like, family, friends, like with my grandma. So there's a solid chance that a few of them will be at our Thanksgiving.
Ah, so then we get a little bit of, oh, this is awesome. Yeah, do the Thanksgiving. I will come and run camera for you.
And maybe grab a plate.
Yeah, charge a turkey leg. No, I think, I love that concept. Well, okay, so the producer in me says you need to be thinking in a direction before you dive yourself into a whole bunch of time, right? But when you get it, my nature is the exact opposite. I go out with a plan thinking I know this is the type of season that I might see a fox or a snake or, you know, a movement of this like type of creature, but you have no idea what you're gonna gather. It's kind of Werner Herzog refers to it as collecting garbage. We don't collect garbage, don't flood your hard drive with a bunch of stuff, you'll never finish anything. There's a lot of good advice in that, but if you're gonna do an observational documentary, the one thing I would recommend, it's gonna be a little more time in post, but I recommend setting up multiple cameras, checking out an extra camera or two, so you can get other perspectives. A little microphone, shotgun mic on the top, because you won't be able to lob up a number of people you can't even identify. But, so you'll catch, and maybe something more like this little Zoom recorder that can catch, you know, it's got an Omni mic on it, so it gets the whole room. Some of those kinds of things. So what you're gonna need for your story if you go that route is gonna be a different equipment list than especially different than what like Andrew is gonna use. And then Aaron's gonna have, if he sets up structured interviews. Not that you couldn't, but I like the observational approach of you just kind of letting chaos ensue around the camera, because, I mean, and I'm telling you, your family cannot be unique in the fact that Thanksgiving is a trigger. So one time you get all these people together, and you're gonna have, especially around an election cycle, you know, you got Biden and Trump, and you're gonna absolutely have a family member who's leaning one way and another's gonna lean the other way, and at some point, even if they avoid each other, you're gonna have to cross. At that
It's a lot better than it used to be, because my like dad's side of the family, they're all like very like hard right, but my mom's side of the family, they're all very hard left. So those Thanksgivings were.
And you don't have like mix and match it quite as much anymore?
I know my parents have been divorced for.
Oh, I got you.
Yeah.
Someone says Biden today all of a sudden.
Oh, yeah, I think I have some family member, I have some, like, I remember there was some people a few Thanksgivings ago talking about how they were putting the microchips in the vaccines and everything, like, they genuinely believe that, that's the kind of family.
My dad had such high blood pressure, and they narrowed it down to he had to delete all his political apps off his phone, and it went down like 20 points. And he just kept getting notifications, and he'd get so angry, and I mean, they're like, well, you know, maybe coffee, maybe red meat, maybe alcohol, you know, all these like dietary things. It was politics that were stressing him out. And I borrowed his truck one time, and he had Rush Limbaugh turned all the way the hell up, and it was like screaming in my ears. I'm going, that's why you're angry. You got someone screaming at you everywhere you drive. So whether your stance is left or right, I mean, I've mostly been moderate most of my life, but yeah, if you got someone screaming at you in one direction or another, everywhere you go, you're gonna arrive heated. And so, yeah, we pretty much got that on a
Yeah, that makes sense.
balancing his politics instead of his red meat.
I stopped following politics pretty soon after I got here, and I no longer have nearly as violent thoughts, so.
Wow. You're too young to be that stressed. Most of the time when I ask students where they're voting, not that I ever want to sway or just out of curiosity, like, hey, you guys gonna vote? Everyone's like, oh, I guess I can vote now. So,
I'll vote for whoever sends the least amount of money to Israel.
yeah, so, and I'm actually, I mean, there is some political leans in our doc stories that you guys are talking about, but none of them are just full on like covering election cycle basis or anything like that. But cool, I think that's very fascinating. So what we have, if it all transpires in the way it's going, I think Adams is very much a hybrid, mostly in my opinion, probably leaning expository, but maybe it's got some characteristics, some other stuff. Aaron, if you go that direction, it'd be expository. Tanias would be expository, covering her grandfather, mockumentary with Andrew. And then for you, Owen, definitely could be expository, but if you guys make yourself part of the story, you could find something that would be, depending on if like, you and Judah end up getting yourselves in the story a little bit. I mean, if you're filming, you know, there's other things that could be a part of it. You can narrate it too, but yours is probably more expository. I would argue it's more common than most. And then I think if you do what you're thinking right now, you're looking at an observational. So kind of an interesting for Dayton's is observational. So you guys haven't hit all 7 necessarily, but definitely portions of all that. And I will say it's very rare that I have a student pick one that's like them, a story about them. Like I'm going to go vegan for the rest of the month or something, you know, like supersize me. But yeah, if anybody was ever interested in that, I'd be willing to hear that out too. So I think, I wonder if I can find you guys like one of my mockumentaries real quick, since I didn't show one. Maybe I can.
I'm asking my grandma about the Granny Parade right now to make sure like they're all like still alive, because they're all like basically rotting, like they're like in their 80s and shit.
I've got to. I love the Granny Brigade concept. I would put some time into that one if I was able. That's an access thing. You know, you really got to be able to. Will they get on camera? Can you get them on camera? And we haven't even got into like contracts and releases and things like that yet. If you're going to interview someone like the Granny Brigade, and you would want a release. You need a release irregardless and we will talk about that more, and I'll provide it. Pretty simple. But in that case, because it's controversial and they could potentially not it might change their mind or something. Ian talked about that. He did a documentary on that individual, not even for a class. He just made it on his own time while he was a student here, because he met this guy and had access. He was all about it that day, and that prop was about a month. But then he had a cultural, religious change and decided that he didn't want people to know he wrote graphic novels for whatever reason, and just said, "Nah, can't have that out." And it was already in film festivals. Like, you can't retract that in that way. So, yeah, those contracts are good. But if, like, you know, with Tanai, with her grandfather, he's likely not going to be like, I don't do it. But you still want to just go through those ropes so it's part of the habit too. So I don't know if I can find it quickly. Oh, there it is. Okay, so this might be the shorter version because the story is longer about why we made this. We were working with the local PBS station showing our series, and it was a frustrating experience. And so we decided for episode 10, felt like we hit a milestone, we were going to no longer cover a real artist. We wanted to do an artist in their space on a fictional character.
So is this the cat artist?
This is the cat dude. Well, I'll play it first, and then I don't have a lot of time. I really got to run at the end, but we'll be able to discuss it briefly. I haven't played anything yet today. I don't know. But that worked.
I like cats, and I like to paint them. And I paint them with their own feces. That's what I do. I have not always been an artist.
Sorry.
I was born at the farm. Get up early, feed the cows, do our chores, get ready for school, get on the bus. When we got back from school, there just was no time for anything like that. You know, Dad said, you're going to be a farmer, you're going to be a farmer, and after one real bad season, my dad said, you're going to be a doctor, a lawyer, an accountant. And I didn't have any time to dabble in art in college, no. I retired early, certified public accountant. I took a watercoloring class and discovered I liked it. I don't remember the fellow's name, but he was over there in Minnesota. I saw him on the news painting geese with goose poop. And, you know, someone might think, you know, that's just nasty. That's, you know, the guy's demented or disturbed. I just thought it was neat. You just really look at the art, and that guy just knew those geese better than them geese knew themselves. When I started picking up watercolor after retirement, I remembered that guy, and I was like, well, I got all the paint in the world with my cats. I mean, have you seen the price of paint? You feed the cat, it comes out the other end. You got the dangest closest to watercolor you're gonna get. You know, one of your crew guys, you know, he's just looking at my art and assuming, you know, I'm messed up or doing the drugs. And I said, you know, hey, look, fella, the only thing I smoke is salmon. I just want to do cat art, and I'm not a deep man, so I'm not trying to say something really crazy outstanding. It's just cats painted in their own pool. What am I afraid of as an artist? My wife. You know, here I am wedged in this back corner of the back room of the back garage in the backyard, and this isn't an accident. You know, she just keeps pushing me further and further and further away from her kitchen. You know, there's no more room to go. If I can't paint here, I can't paint. I don't know, she might have had her fill with this. I think it embarrasses her. I'm afraid she's gonna tell me to knock this off. Also, one of my fears as an artist is a pink eye. You know, I wear the gloves. I'm careful. The biggest challenge for me as an artist is making the paint. It's a mixture of tuna and coffee, ground coffee, some cat food in there, and you know, the cats eat it. They really love it. And when it comes out the other end, voila, the paint. The big problem with that is my wife just absolutely will not have it in the kitchen, and I gotta wait until she goes to the grocery store or Wednesday night Lutheran Women's Prayer meeting. It really brings out the flies. That's a challenge. Flies just love this cat poop mixture. Flies are really starting to come in here. Oh, kitty. Who's a kitty? Oh, they know what I'm painting them.
Why is
That was
Federal Bank
insane.
streams?
Question, was that made with iMovie?
No.
No, that had like the iMovie text though at the end or something like that, I don't know.
That font is Apple, because
Yeah.
it came out of Final Cut
That's
Pro.
what it looked like.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with how we approach that
That was definitely
and how we piss some people off. Because with the mockumentary, you have the slapstick style, where you just really shove it in your face. Like, we're, you know, like the initial, some people suggest like, oh, we need to have him like covered in shit and stuff, and I was like, that's not, we wanted it to feel as if this guy really sat in his garage in daylight. And since we'd already done 9 episodes, we had a platform on what, we asked the same questions and all of that. Yeah,
what was the public response to the Chuck Larson episode?
so we lost following on Instagram and YouTube. The Art Center got several phone calls. We released this on April Fool's Day because people didn't quite get the gist. My first documentary subject, my dear friend Rex Rosenberg, is an art card artist, and it's one of them suggested that you could watch that I listed in there because that was my first independent film I did out of college. And he called, like he shot me a text and said, you know, I love your work. I always want to support you. That one was pretty hard to get excited about. And then when I told him, I go, happy April Fool's, Rex, and he goes, oh my God, it's the most brilliant thing ever. And then he wanted to get in on the joke. So when we posted online and stuff, he was like, is it okay if I kind of add to it? So Rex came in and commented, I've known Chuck for years, he's a brilliant artist. And so people ended up wanting to get in on the joke once they caught on to the joke. But it was really important to us that it felt just like another episode, and that that this actually was a guy doing this up in Minnesota, just, you know, painting cats with their own poop. And Thomas came up with the idea, who's the actor, and he's actually in his 30s in this, shaved his own head, grayed his beard, found the outfit. he tested it around town, went and found people that know him, and they didn't recognize him, because he put a lot of time into this. And he, in the 90s, when he was a kid, he was on PBS one day, when I think he lived, I don't even think he was living, well, he might have been in Kansas at that time. And someone, like a Canadian artist would paint, he says he saw a guy painting geese with goose poop. That was actually something he saw. So there is some artist, some documentary that's about 20, 30 years old out there that's actually, I've never seen it. But yeah, we used candy for everything, and the candy was great because it tracked the flies in the way we needed. Shot this in my back garage that has since burned down at my old house. So it's kind of nostalgic, my old garage. But yeah, we had initially wanted to package this in with our other films, because we would give 3 or 4 at a time to PBS, and I really didn't think they were even checking them anymore, and they weren't helping us with any sort of production or anything. Well, I ended up pulling the whole series when I hit a quarterly spot where I could yank the contract, because I was really frustrated, and still would be if that was a relationship that we decided to continue. We made this for them. We wanted it to go on TV. And so when it didn't, because I pulled it in the fall at that quarterly section, and we sat on it for months until April Fool's came around. So sometimes you can't, there's a lot of stuff to take from this simple little mockumentary, but the best part was silly stuff like, it really only took a couple of us. There's stock imagery in there, but I think we balanced pretty well with, I mean, he did all these paintings. He actually painted these paintings. I have a few in my office. He's really talented. The way we block the scene out is, there's a lot of like fictional work in it. So here, where he's walking from, on the other side of, as if he's like walking around the house, it's literally like 3 feet. And then there's the fence is a walled off spot, but we blocked it to make it look like, you know, he was coming from around the shop. There's a cat here somewhere. This was Apron Strings. They let us come in, and we took our entire studio and field class to shoot this scene. So we had like 18 kids, 18 students, 2 teachers. Thomas was he was our script writing instructor at the time.
Come all the way to Salina?
No, there's one in Hutch.
Oh, there's one in Hutch?
On Main Street, and they're really nice. They do cooking,
I guess, yeah.
like training, they teach classes out of this section, and they've let us come down and film. They didn't know this story, so all of their employees were kind of gathered around like, are these some real poop? Like, so, and we didn't tell the students what the story was either, like they didn't know the script, so everyone was kind of on a, we kind of surprised everybody with it as we went along, so we had a lot of fun with it.
That's pretty funny.
Like this, if I can get it to land on it. This is stock. We pulled these off free stock sites. And then the last cat that he's petting, my editor in Texas, I think it was his cat. Or I know he got this shot for me. This is actually, if you look at the floor, that's actually the garage. And so when he reaches down to pet, we just had him have the same sleeve on. And so he's actually not, that cat isn't in my garage when he pets him here. Or in a second. Yeah. Let me just cut back. So what I love about mockumentary, because yes, it has documentary characteristics, the way we lit the interview, just even the way I put the lav on, but we still was able to cheat it like a fictional film, and I think that made it a lot of fun. Any other questions, thoughts about Chuck?
Does it stink?
What?
Does it stink in there?
No, it's all candy. Snickers, you like to break up like Snickers and Kit Kats and stuff like that. And then I think a little food coloring. We actually did set and do our, because we usually did demos, so he did a demo, and then we cut it in. So if you watched any of our other ones, it would mirror a similar kind of approach, I guess you would say. Because this one was very bland, very yellow, tan, because that was that character that we saw. So we kind of staged it like that. But some of our characters were like very vibrant people that would have a lot of color flash around and more uppity music, just depending on the individual. But in this particular case, it really, it got a lot of attention pretty quickly. So, yeah, I gotta run to Gowan's. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts going forward? What I want you to be doing over the weekend is deciding, okay, this is exactly what I'm gonna go into. If that is in fact what you're gonna go into, start thinking around it. So if you're Andrew going mockumentary, start thinking about that location and that fan that you gotta make, right? In Aaron's case, get a hold of your cousin and try to figure out if you can crisscross and make that work, that kind of thing. Owen, what football player, you know, anything in that type of capacity. Adam, you have archival that you need to acquire. You probably have already know where some is, but that's the kind of thing you start with. With documentary, there's so many moving elements. There's always something that you can be doing, even if it's just thinking of what questions to ask or where I'm going to place that camera at Thanksgiving. I'm really excited about that. We're going to have to revisit this Granny Brigade though at some point.
I'm working it out right now, I might be able to do that for because I'm gonna be home for the weekend after Thanksgiving too, and they like to do this thing where they go to like an overpass and fly all their flags
You
and
mentioned
stuff.
one, yeah.
And they do that every Saturday, so I'm gonna go to that.
Every Saturday.
I'm gonna go to the thing, or like, go to when they do it on Saturday, and maybe like talk to them and.
Politics, religion too, you gotta think, even sports teams, but man, politics, especially currently in America, you could grab anyone off the street, interview them, and you're gonna get an interesting opinion, it feels like. And
Yeah.
so, you really can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, yeah, you can talk to anyone, you'll talk to one dude, and you're like, I'll have like the most basic opinions ever, then you pull over my dad, and you'd be like, oh, climate change is a real thing.
Earth is flat. So, and the other thing to think about, when I mentioned this on Tuesday, these might be building into bigger stories. So when you mention the Granny Brigade, that really comes to mind. Other things could progress and move, like Adam's, the Asian hate scenario is going to either get better or worse. And there could be follow-ups. This could be the start of a bigger project. The Granny Brigade, and football absolutely too, but the Granny Brigade, with no exception, next year is the election. So if you start off with a simple little short on them, you might follow them around a bit more and have one really fascinating story, a bunch of angry old ladies waving flags. I love it. I mean, I don't even care what the flag has on it. It could have kittens on it, and I want to get their opinion. So old people are awesome.
A lot of American flags, a lot of, wait, did I ever show you the photo of the one time I did a flag waving with them?
Yes, because you had a
The
bullet, right?
the
Yeah.
bullet in the American flag,
You
yeah.
did show me that. I think this could be, you might even interject yourself with one of these other modes in here, and you could be an interesting character involved too, whether it's just your opinion or something. I don't know, just a thought, because we aren't hitting those other ones as much. I always like to see a variety. Awesome. Okay, I got 3 minutes to run across campus. Have a good weekend. And yeah, Tuesday and Wednesday, or Thursday, we'll keep powering through this, and I'll have a lot more of the production side of how we
Why
do
not
things.
Tuesday?
What?
You said
Tuesday and Thursday.
Oh.
All right, choking on my sore throat.
Yeah. Have a good weekend.
See you guys.